They told you success was something you chase. Something out there, locked behind sacrifice, sleepless nights, applause, and endless motion. They told you to grind harder, talk louder, post more, work more, spend more, be more. And if you still didn't have it, you just weren't doing enough. But that was the first lie. Because real success, the kind Napoleon Hill spoke of between the lines, was never about addition. It was always about alignment. It is not the man who moves the fastest who wins. It is the man who moves with purpose, unmoved by the noise. But they don't want you to know that. Because if you knew the truth, you would stop dancing for their approval. You would stop outsourcing your worth to numbers and names. You would stop worshiping effort and start embodying essence. There is a war beneath the world you see, not with bullets or borders, but with beliefs. And the battlefield is, it's not that success is a lie. It's that the version you were sold was engineered to keep you in motion, not in mastery. To keep you productive, but not powerful. Ambitious, but never awakened. Read that again, because the deepest chains are the ones you never question. But Napoleon Hill did question. In fact, he broke them. And what he found behind the veil wasn't just a blueprint for building wealth. It was a code for reclaiming the mind from the inside out. This is not about motivational thinking. This is about confronting the distortion, about meeting yourself in the mirror and asking, whose version of success am I living? You may not like the answer, but if you keep listening, you'll remember something ancient, something buried beneath years of noise, and you'll feel it like a key turning in your chest. Not the start of something new, but the return of something true. Let's begin. They never told you that most of the people teaching you about success were still trying to find it themselves. They wore the right suits. They posted the right quotes. They spoke the right language. Hustle, grind, ROI, discipline, mindset. But their eyes told a different story. Because there is a difference between having success and being it. And in the last 40 years, we've seen a silent shift. Success became performance. It became external, measurable only by money, clout, validation, and noise. But here's what they won't say out loud. The man obsessed with looking successful is usually the one who still feels like a failure inside. They won't say it because it breaks the illusion. The illusion they built. An empire of content, coaches, and conference, feeding you the idea that if you just copy their morning routine, drink the right supplement, or run their playbook, you'll finally feel whole. But that's the trick. You were never meant to feel whole. Not in that system. Not in that model. Because if you did, you would stop needing them. You would stop buying into the fantasy that success is something you have to earn through exhaustion. That worth must be proven by performance. That freedom is only for the few. That was the real deception. And they built it like a religion. Not around truth, but around striving. Worship the hustle. Bow to the algorithm. Pray for likes. Confess your goals. Repent your failures. Sacrifice your time. Give until you disappear. And what do you get in return? A dopamine spike? A badge? A comment? Then back to the grind. But here's the truth. Napoleon Hill understood, long before the internet, before social proof, before the noise, success comes to those who become success conscious, not those who work harder, not those who chase more, but those who become internally aligned with the identity of someone who already is what they seek. Because here's the thing nobody teaches. Real success doesn't begin with action. It begins with awareness. But awareness is dangerous to those who profit from your confusion. So they keep you entertained, distracted, addicted. They feed you the symbols of success without the substance. You start chasing logos, not legacy. Followers, not foundations. Trends, not truth. You begin to confuse noise for meaning. And slowly, so slowly, you drift. Not because you're lazy, not because you're weak, but because the current was designed to pull you away from yourself. That's the system. A machine that runs on your unconscious obedience. And obedience always begins with a lie. That you're not enough yet. That you're one more course, one more launch, one more 5 a wake up from finally being someone. But what if that's the trap? What if success was never supposed to be a destination, but a mirror? And what if every time you traded your intuition for their advice, you were stepping further from your own reflection? They sold you the illusion that you must earn your power. Napoleon Hill knew better. He taught that thought, when backed by belief and clarity of purpose, is the greatest form of currency. Not because it manifests success instantly, but because it reshapes the man who carries it. The illusion says success is something you do, but the truth is, success is something you embody, and when you become it, the world must rearrange around that identity. It's law. But identity doesn't come from books. It doesn't come from hacks, frameworks, or even mentors. It comes from truth. And truth, for most, is terrifying. Because once you know it, you can no longer pretend. You can no longer blame. You can no longer keep performing someone else's dream while abandoning your own. So they teach you just enough to stay busy, but not enough to wake up. And that is the cost of this illusion. A lifetime of motion with no direction. A lifetime of goals with no grounding. You climb the ladder. You hit the target. But the silence inside gets louder. Because deep down, some part of you knows this isn't what it was supposed to feel like. Where is the peace? Where is the knowing? Where is the alignment? They lied to you. They handed you a mask and called it your potential. But here's the deeper truth. You were never supposed to become successful in their eyes. You were supposed to become sovereign in your own. And sovereignty doesn't come from strategy. It comes from self-possession, from mastering thought, from commanding emotion, from reclaiming your time, your voice, your presence. And no one can give that to you. They can sell you the map, but only you can remember the territory. And it starts by seeing the illusion for what it is. Not to judge it, not to hate it, but to step beyond it with your eyes open, ready to enter the battlefield that no one sees, but everyone feels. There is a war you wake up to every day, but it doesn't show up on the news. There are no uniforms, no sirens, no fire in the sky. This war is internal, and the battlefield is your mind. Napoleon Hill didn't discover this in a laboratory. He didn't learn it from a motivational seminar. He found it by listening deeply to the patterns that live beneath every great leader he interviewed. And later, he revealed it in a manuscript the world wasn't ready for, Outwitting the Devil. In it, Hill exposes something most never dared to name, a force, a shadow, a voice that exists inside every man and woman who has ever dreamed of greatness and silently sabotaged themselves before they could taste it. He called it drifting. But drifting isn't laziness. It's not procrastination. It's a spiritual coma. It's when you move through life asleep with your eyes open, going through motions, following scripts, playing roles, working jobs you don't love, for people you don't trust, chasing goals that aren't even yours. You're awake, but you're not alive. And the tragic part is, most people never realize they're drifting because the world rewards drift. It gives you titles, paychecks, praise. It tells you you're doing well, even as you feel your soul evaporating. It applauds your busyness while your spirit screams for stillness. But Hill was clear. The man who moves with definite purpose is the one who outwits the devil. The war is between two selves, one that remembers and one that forgets, one that is awake and one that is hypnotized. Every day, you choose which one leads, and most days, you don't even realize you're choosing. That's the power of the inner war. It doesn't announce itself with fear. It creeps in with comfort. It tells you, you're fine. Tomorrow is better. Play it safe. Don't rock the boat. Wait for the perfect moment. But the perfect moment never comes because it was never meant to. The war is won not by waiting, but by waking up. You see, drifting happens when you surrender authorship of your own mind. When you let television shape your thoughts. Let culture write your beliefs. Let fear script your decisions. You think you're free, but your mind is being directed like a film. And the one holding the pen is not you. The true war, then, is not about money. It's not about status, achievement, or even discipline. It's about possession of self. Can you own your mind? Can you claim your thoughts? Can you sit in silence long enough to hear the difference between your truth and your training? Hill didn't write that to enter. He wrote it to warn. Because drifting doesn't just cost you success. It costs you selfhood. And if you lose that, even if you win the world, you've lost everything. Think of the people you know who seem successful but are visibly empty. They smile in public, but in private, they're at war with a life they never consciously chose. They made it, yes, but they drifted into a version of themselves they can't even recognize anymore. This is the fate Hill was trying to help you avoid. To choose definiteness of purpose, not because it's productive, but because it's protective. It anchors you. It cuts through fog. It ends the drift. And that purpose doesn't have to be grand. It just has to be yours. The war between your two selves is subtle. It doesn't rage like fire. It whispers like fog. One voice says, "You were born for more." The other says, "Who do you think you are?" One wants you to build. The other wants you to wait. One invites discomfort, growth, mastery. The other feeds you comfort, approval, and excuses. Which one do you feed? Because whichever self you feed becomes the dominant identity. And your life always expands to meet the boundaries of that identity. Napoleon Hill said it clearly, thoughts are things, but not all thoughts are yours. Some were inherited, some were implanted, some were given to you by people who never lived a day in alignment themselves. This is why the war is internal. It's not about attacking the world. It's about no longer attacking yourself, no longer believing every voice that says you're not ready, you're too late, you missed your shot. Those voices are not truth. They're echoes of the old world, the hypnotized world, trying to pull you back in the drift. But now you see it. And what you see, you can name. And what you can name, you can defeat. You don't need more strategies. You don't need another motivation video. You need clarity, ownership, and the courage to silence the false self so the real one can finally rise. Ready to meet the voices that have been quietly shaping your reality all along? You heard them before. Quiet, but persistent. Play it safe. You'll embarrass yourself. Who do you think you are? You're not like them. You should have figured it out by now. These aren't just passing thoughts. They are gatekeepers, silent architects of your identity, planted long ago. And if you don't recognize them, you'll spend your entire life dancing to their rhythm, thinking it's your own. This is the third layer of the lie. Success isn't just blocked by what's around you. It's blocked by who's within you. Napoleon Hill warned us in Outwitting the Devil that the greatest danger we face is not the world outside, but the voices trained to speak inside. Society, school, even our families, they don't teach us to think. They teach us to obey, to follow, to conform, to fear making waves, to stay small enough to be accepted, but competent enough to appear successful. So these voices form parts of you split by experience, archetypes forged by survival, the inner critic born when you were first told you weren't good enough, the comfort dealer, the voice that whispers, you deserve a break, even when it's stealing your momentum. The shadow voice, the unseen force that fears your power, because power threatens the story of who you've always been. These are not random. They are strategically placed to keep you safe. In a cage, not a physical cage, a psychological, made of repetition, rejection, ridicule, internalized. Every time you tried to step into the unknown, they pulled you back. Every time you dreamed bigger than your environment, they questioned you. Every time you chose growth over comfort, they sabotaged the bridge beneath your feet. But here's the part no one tells you. These gatekeepers don't speak in words. They speak in emotion, doubt, hesitation, anxiety, procrastination, guilt. And because they speak emotionally, they feel real, as if they are the voice of wisdom, discernment, even self-care. But they're not. They are program protectors, loyal to your past, not your potential. And until you confront them, they will run your life, quietly, permanently. Napoleon Hill knew this. That's why he didn't just talk about principles. He talked about reprogramming, because you don't rise to the level of your ambition. You rise to the level of your self-concept. And your self-concept is guarded by these voices. Let's make it visual. Imagine you are standing at the edge of a bridge. On the other side, your higher self, clarity, purpose, wealth, peace, presence. But between you and that identity, stand three sentinels. They don't shout. They don't fight. They whisper. You're not ready. What if they laugh? You should stay here. It's safe here. You know this version of you. Most people turn back, not because the bridge is broken, but because the gatekeepers sound like truth. But they are not truth. They are echoes. Phantoms from a version of you that was built for survival, not sovereignty. And here's the key. They only exist because you've never faced them directly. You've obeyed, avoided, negotiated, but you haven't overruled them, not with force, but with identity. Because these voices lose power the moment you say, I see you, I know where you came from, but you no longer define me. That is the beginning of inner freedom, not by silencing the voices, but by disempowering their authority. When you do this, when you reclaim the throne of your own mind, something shifts. You stop asking for permission. You stop doubting your pace. You stop trying to earn worth through exhaustion. And for the first time, you lead, not from ego, but from embodiment. Napoleon Hill wasn't just teaching how to think and grow rich. He was revealing a deeper code. You must become the master of your mind, or you will be mastered by the ghosts inside it. So ask yourself now, which voice have you obeyed most this year? Was it yours? Or was it the one designed to protect the identity you've already outgrown? The gatekeepers are real, but so is your authority to walk through them. And every step beyond their reach is a step closer to your truth. Now that you've seen the illusions, are you ready to begin to rebuild? Not as a performer, but as a creator. At some point, the noise becomes unbearable. The false voices, the masks, the endless chase for validation disguised as vision. You reach a moment where everything external, the achievements, the applause, even the ambition feels hollow. And in that silence, if you're brave enough to stand still, you hear it. The chisel, not in your hands, but in your soul. Because real transformation doesn't happen by addition. It happens by removal. This is the sculptor's truth, one that few speak about. Because it is not glamorous. It is not optimized. It is not trending. It is quiet and ancient. See? A sculptor does not create by building up clay. He begins with a solid block of stone and removes everything that isn't truth. He doesn't ask for permission. He doesn't fear the dust. He doesn't beg for validation from unfinished statues. He knows what lives inside the marble, even if no one else sees it yet. And so must you. You are not here to perform a life. You are here to reveal one. And revelation begins in silence. This is where the old codes of success fall apart. Because the world has trained you to add more effort, more hours, more goals, more personas. But what if the real work is subtraction? What if your future doesn't depend on becoming something new, but on releasing everything that isn't aligned with your essence? This is the sculptor's path, and it's not popular because it's not easy. It demands solitude, reflection, unlearning. It requires you to sit with the pieces of yourself that no longer serve, and instead of hiding them, you cut them away. The ego that needs approval. The identity built on proving. The dreams that were never yours to begin with. Gone. Not out of self-rejection, but out of self-honor. Napoleon Hill spoke of this sculpting indirectly. He called it definiteness of purpose, but what he really meant was intentional identity. To become someone who no longer flinches at stillness, who no longer rushes into motion just to escape reflection, who no longer sacrifices truth for applause, because the man who knows who he is doesn't need to convince the world. He becomes undeniable, not because he is loud, but because he is anchored. There is a sculptor in you, waiting, watching, holding the chisel, not to fix you, but to free you. To free the version of you that is not reactive, but sovereign, not addicted to movement, but rooted in mission, not performing success, but living in alignment with it. And yes, that means leaving some parts behind, old goals, old stories, old selves. This is the grief of growth, and it is sacred. It means stepping away from the crowd, not to isolate, but to integrate. Because when you come back, you will no longer need the crowd. You will walk differently, speak differently, choose differently, not because you tried to upgrade your life, but because you chiseled down to the truth of it. Success, in the original sense, the one Hill pointed to, was never about chasing a dream. It was about becoming the kind of person who could hold it. And holding it doesn't mean holding on to things. It means holding state, clarity, conviction, calm. This is what cannot be stolen. This is what does not waver. This is what makes others follow you silently, even when you never ask, because they feel it, the stillness, the sculpted self, the absence of pretense, and that is power. You may not be where you want to be yet, but you are already holding the chisel. The question is, will you use it? Or will you keep polishing the stone, hoping the world accepts the shape it's in? The sculptor doesn't wait for approval. He begins, now that you've carved away the noise. Are you ready to recover the timeless principles they hoped you'd never remember? Beneath the noise, beneath the trend cycles and algorithmic success formulas, there is a code. It was never loud, never marketed, never turned into a viral clip or a downloadable PDF. But it existed, and still does, waiting in the silence for those willing to listen deeper. Napoleon Hill didn't invent it. He simply revealed it, piece by piece, layer by layer, from the mouths of men who had built empires from nothing. and from the quiet voice within himself that refused to stay silent. The world read Think and Grow Rich as a book on money, but it was never about money. It was about identity engineering, the restructuring of thought, belief, and being, so that wealth, power, and influence became a byproduct, not a prize. But they tried to bury that part. They took Hill's most dangerous insights and made them motivational, turned principles into cliches, twisted spiritual law into productivity tips. Why? Because an awakened man can't be controlled, and a sovereign mind doesn't buy into systems that run on dependency and doubt. The real code, the one they hoped you'd overlook, was a set of internal technologies, eternal principles, not to be memorized, but embodied. Let's unearth them. 1. Decision. Successful people make decisions quickly and change them slowly, not because they're impulsive, but because they know who they are. And when identity is clear, direction follows. But indecision? That's the symptom of a fractured self, of someone still asking for permission to live. The buried code is this: clarity isn't found, it's declared. You decide first. The universe aligns second. 2. Persistence. Failure cannot cope with persistence. Not grind, not burnout, not obsession. Persistence. A calm, unshakable return to the mission, regardless of emotion or outcome. They don't teach this anymore. They teach shortcuts, funnels, hacks, hype. But persistence is the rhythm of creation, the heartbeat of mastery, and the proof that you believe in what you're building, even when results are silent. 3. Faith. Faith is the starting point of all accumulation of riches, but not faith in an external deity. Faith in the inner God force, that divine current inside you that knows, I was made for this. I carry what the world needs. I am not here by accident. This is why faith is so dangerous. Because when a man believes in himself at this level, he stops being controlled by fear, status, or scarcity. He becomes a source, not a seeker. 4. Imagination. Imagination is the workshop of the mind. They made this sound poetic, but it's not poetry. It's power. Your mind is a blueprint machine, and the life you're living right now is the architecture of yesterday's dominant image. You want to shift reality? You don't hustle harder. You see differently. You speak from the end. You create from the vision, not the void. Imagination, when merged with belief, becomes prophecy. 5. Autosuggestion. Any idea, plan, or purpose may be placed in the mind by repetition of thought. Modern culture calls this delusion. Hill called it program. Every day you are hypnotizing yourself with words, with focus, with emotion. The only question is, whose spell are you under? The buried code here isn't about mantras or sticky notes. It's about consistency of inner broadcast. Your dominant internal narrative becomes your default external experience. Change the transmission. Change the terrain. These principles are not motivational tools. They are metaphysical weapons. And they are buried not in libraries, but under layers of self-doubt, cultural programming, and spiritual amnesia. They hoped you forget. They hoped you'd read Hill's work and stop at surface level. They hoped you'd think it was about money and miss the inheritance hidden beneath it. But here you are, remembering, not just reading, recognizing. Because these codes were never just in the book. They were in you, all along. You felt them in your gut, in your dreams, in the part of you that keeps coming back to the question, isn't there more than this? Yes, and it's not out there. It's in the architecture of your own becoming. What they buried wasn't a secret. It was your sovereignty. Now dig. You heard the voices. You've seen the illusion. You felt the pull. The quiet knowing that something in you has always been meant to rise, but never knew how. And maybe now you see the truth. The path was never about rising through permission. It was about rising without it. No applause needed. No validation required. No gatekeeper necessary. Because the version of success they sold you, the one built on chasing, proving, and performing, was never made for someone like you. You weren't born to follow the blueprint. You were born to become it. But becoming is not a transaction. It's not what you earn after years of doing the right things. It's what you claim when you remember who you are. That's what Napoleon Hill was pointing to all along. Not some motivational formula, but an inner reclamation. You do not need another title, another breakthrough, another lesson to deserve power. You need only the courage to stand in it, fully, even when you're scared, even when you're doubted, even when the old self screams for you to play small. One more time. This is the final lie you must break. That success is something you must wait for. That peace is something you'll have once you get there. That your greatness is dependent on someone else's recognition of it. No, your greatness is independent of recognition. It is not validated by the world. It is revealed in stillness and forged in silence. You're not late. You're not behind. You're not missing anything. You are simply standing at the final gate, the one with no lock because it was never closed to begin with. All it takes now is the step, not a leap, not a transformation. Just one clear act of ownership. Decide, not with hype, but with presence. Walk into the day differently. Speak to yourself differently. Build from identity, not insecurity. And when the old voices rise, as they will, meet them not with fear, but with recognition. I see you. You are the past, and I no longer live there. That's what it means to rise without permission. It's not loud. It's not cinematic. It's quiet, unshakable, final. Because when you rise from within, nothing outside can pull you down. And maybe, just maybe, that was the code all along. Not to escape the system, but to transcend it. Not to conquer the world, but to return to the center of your own. So here you are, at the end of the illusion, and the beginning of something far more powerful than success, sovereignty. Let the world keep shouting. Let them chase and perform. You will move in silence, build with clarity, and rise not to prove, but to become. Because you no longer need permission. You only need to remember, you've carried the code all along. Now you have the key. Use it.